February 9, 1945, 60 miles off the Norwegian coast. Deep beneath the frigid North Sea, Lieutenant James Launders stood motionless in HMS Venture's control room, listening. For 3 hours, his hydrophone operator had tracked machinery noise radiating from somewhere in the darkness ahead. U-864 had no idea Venture was there. No idea it was being hunted. No idea that in minutes it would become the only submarine in history sunk by another submarine while both were completely submerged. Before we dive deeper into this extraordinary story, if you're fascinated by untold naval warfare history and the tactical innovations that changed the course of World War II, hit that like button and subscribe. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We love hearing from our community around the world. Your support helps us bring these forgotten chapters of history back to life. Launders had been tracking passively. Silent running. Electric motors only. The German commander heard nothing, detected nothing, suspected nothing. At 12 hours, Venturer fired 4 torpedoes at 17-second intervals. The fourth struck U-864 amidships. The submarine broke in two and sank in seconds. 73 men died. Launders never even saw his target. He did it all by sound. And in that moment, naval warfare changed forever. The engagement proved something the Royal Navy had understood since 1939 but rarely had opportunity to demonstrate. British submarines possessed decisive advantages when hunting U-boats. Advantages so profound that the question wasn't whether they could kill German submarines more effectively than destroyers. The question was why they so rarely got the chance. The acoustic advantage alone was extraordinary. A destroyer's turbines roared like a freight train, detectable miles away. A submarine on electric motors whispered through the depths, hearing everything while remaining unheard. Destroyers detected submerged U-boats at ranges measured in hundreds of yards. Submarines could detect targets at several times that distance, sometimes an order of magnitude more. Yet in 6 years of war, British submarines sank exactly 12 German U-boats. Destroyers sank 260-4. This is the story of British innovation that worked brilliantly. In theory, but faced operational realities that kept it from changing the war. A story of acoustic superiority, tactical genius, and geographic separation. A story of what might have been, punctuated by rare moments when theory became devastating practice. The German submariners who survived the war told the same story in memoir after memoir. They feared destroyers with a terror that shattered psychological defenses. Herbert Warner's Iron Coffins describes what he called blue-collar Titan neurosis, the psychological breakdown that happened when depth charges hammered your steel hull for hours. Men screaming, clawing at bulkheads, collapsing into catatonia. One explosion, then another. Then another. Each one closer. The lights go out, pipes burst. Seawater sprays. The hull groans. You're hundreds of feet down, and something above you's something you cannot see. Something you cannot fight, teased trying to crush you like an egg. Werner devoted hundreds of pages to describing this terror. He mentioned enemy submarines exactly 0 times. Otto Kretschmer, Germany's most successful U-boat ace with 44 ships sunk, operated throughout the war, encountering numerous British forces. His war diaries and post-war accounts focus overwhelmingly on destroyers, convoy escorts, and increasingly deadly aircraft. Gunther Preen's memoir concentrates on the same threats. Grand Admiral Dönetz's memoirs chronicle his fear of increasingly deadly destroyers and aircraft. Weapons that broke the U-boat campaign. Post-war interrogation reports of captured U-boat crews contain no mentions of British submarines as a primary threat. The statistics are unambiguous. Of 784 German U-boats lost to enemy action, destroyers and escort vessels sank 260-4-30-3.7%. Aircraft destroyed between 250 and 354. Allied submarines of all nations combined sank 21. British submarines specifically accounted for 12 kills. 12 in 6 years of war. A German U-boat commander faced a 1 in 65 chance of encountering a British submarine that could sink him. He faced a 1 in 3 chance of being destroyed by a destroyer or aircraft. The threat wasn't theoretical, it was mathematical. So why did submarines have such decisive advantages when they did engage? The answer starts with sound. Naval warfare in 1945 operated in a world where detection meant survival and stealth meant killing. Destroyers were catastrophically loud. Their turbines, boilers, and screws created acoustic signatures detectable several miles away. Every destroyer advertised its approach. A surfaced U-boat heard them long before detection, allowing emergency dives. Standard tactics involved high-speed approaches, hoping to close distance before the U-boat submerged. It rarely worked. Submarines on electric motors produced vastly less noise. HMS Venturer cruising submerged at 3 knots generated minimal sound signature, effectively silent compared to surface warships. British T-class submarines carried passive hydrophones that detected machinery noise, propeller cavitation, and hull creaks at considerable ranges. In good conditions, a submerged submarine could hear surface ships several times farther away than those ships could detect the submarine. This created an asymmetry that fundamentally favored submarines. A destroyer hunting a U-boat faced significant disadvantage. The U-boat heard it coming and dove. A submarine hunting a U-boat enjoyed overwhelming advantage. The U-boat often never knew it was there. HMS Venturer's tracking of U-864 demonstrated this perfectly. At 0932 hours, Venturer's hydrophone operator detected faint machinery noise. Launders ordered silent running. Out for 3 hours, Venturer tracked U-864 using sound alone. Never using active sonar, which would have revealed their presence. Never surfacing for visual confirmation. Just patient, professional, passive tracking of a target that had absolutely no idea it was being hunted. U-86 for single quotes as faulty snorkel machinery radiated noise. Venturer heard it clearly. E-864 heard nothing. This was impossible for destroyers. Active ASTIC, the British sonar system, worked by transmitting sound pulses and listening for echoes. Effective range typically 1,500 to 2,500 yards. But ASTIC betrayed the destroyer's position. U-boats heard the distinctive ping and knew exactly where the threat was. ASDIC also became useless above 15 knots due to water flow noise. Destroyers hunting submarines had to slow down precisely when they most needed speed. And ASTIC had a critical blind spot 200 yards directly ahead, the exact zone where depth charges fell. Every attack run required passing directly over the target, losing contact at the worst possible moment. Submarines attacking submarines had none of these limitations. They tracked passively at any speed. They maintained contact continuously. They fired torpedoes from standoff range with precision based on hours of tracking data. When Launders finally fired 4 torpedoes at 12 hours, he did so after 3 hours of patient stalking and manual calculation. He knew U-864's exact course, speed, depth, and zigzag pattern. The German commander had no warning until the first torpedo was detected acoustically. By then, it was too late. The 4th torpedo struck amidships. U-864 broke in 2 and sank in seconds. 73 men died. Launders never even saw his target. He did it all by sound. The tactical advantages extended beyond acoustics. Destroyers operated in 2 dimensions, confined to the surface. Submarines operated in 3, exploiting oceanic thermal layers to hide below temperature gradients that deflected sonar. They attacked from any angle or depth. British T-class submarines could dive to approximately 300 to 350 feet operational depth. The 3-dimensional tactical environment favored the attacker, who could choose position and geometry. Destroyers attacking submerged submarines required passing directly overhead. Submarines attacking U-boats simply positioned themselves for optimal torpedo geometry and fired from safe range. Operational persistence favored submarines overwhelmingly. T-class boats conducted 28 250-day patrols. They remained submerged 48 hours continuously on battery power. Destroyers needed frequent refueling. 4 to 7 day endurance maximum. They couldn't operate effectively in heavy seas when ASDIC became unreliable. A submarine on patrol station could wait weeks for a single target. Destroyers couldn't wait weeks for anything. T-class submarines displaced 1090 to 1325 tons surfaced, 1575 tons submerged. 275 feet long. Armed with exceptional torpedo salvo 10 forward-facing tubes. They could fire devastating 10 torpedo spreads. Two 1250 horsepower diesels drove them at 15 knots surfaced. 14 50 horsepower electric motors provided 9 knots submerged. Range exceeded 11,000 nautical miles. But T-class submarines weren't designed primarily as U-boat hunters. They were conceived in the late 1930s as large, long-range attack submarines intended for Far East operations and attacking surface warships. The huge forward torpedo salvo reflected plans to penetrate Japanese destroyer screens. Anti-submarine warfare against U-boats emerged as an opportunistic secondary mission driven by wartime necessity. So why did they only sink 12 U-boats in 6 years? The answer isn't failure of British innovation. It's geography and operational reality preventing theory from meeting practice. British submarines and German U-boats operated in different theaters, pursuing different missions in ways that kept them apart. The Mediterranean, where T-class boats concentrated in early war years, hosted Italian submarines, not German U-boats. German U-boats concentrated in the Atlantic hunting Allied convoys. The theaters simply didn't overlap significantly. When HMS Tally-Ho sank UIT-23 on February 14, 1944. It happened in the Malacca Strait, 5,000 miles from the Atlantic battlefield. When HMS Triton destroyed U-859 on September 23, 1944. Same location. These weren't failures to engage in primary theaters. They were encounters in geographic areas far removed from the main campaign. Even when submarines patrolled the same waters, detection limitations prevented many encounters. Both sides lacked highly effective means to detect submerged submarines at long range. Submarine versus submarine combat typically required one boat surfaced for battery charging or making excessive noise. The HMS Thistle versus U for engagement on April 9 and 10, 1940, illustrated this perfectly. Thistle detected, surfaced U-4, and fired 6 torpedoes. All missed, U-4 crash-dived. Both submarines spent the night searching for each other without success. The next morning, U-4 caught Thistle recharging batteries on the surface and torpedoed her with all hands. 53 British submariners died. Both boats were vulnerable primarily when surfaced. Submerged detection proved extraordinarily difficult. This was the fundamental operational reality. German U-boats spent their patrols hunting merchant convoys, not worrying about being hunted by submarines. The immediate threats were destroyers that appeared whenever they attacked convoys. Aircraft that increasingly dominated after 1943. Black May. 41 U-boats destroyed in 1 month, nearly all by aircraft or destroyers. That was the threat that mattered. That was the threat that broke the U-boat campaign. HMS Tally-Ho's engagement occurred at 0519 hours, approximately 80 miles south of Penang. Lieutenant Commander Leslie William Bennington commanded the T-class boat. Both submarines spotted each other while cruising surfaced a meeting engagement neither expected. Both commanders instantly ordered crash dives and torpedo spreads. UIT-23, formerly Italian submarine Reginald Giuliani, was transporting tin, quinine, and strategic materials from Singapore to occupied France. Both submarines fired nearly simultaneously, but only Tally-Ho's torpedoes found their mark. The submarine sank quickly, with 26 killed. HMS Trenton's precision strike on September 23, 1944, represented textbook intelligence-directed submarine interdiction. Lieutenant Commander Arthur Richard Heslett commanded Trenton. Ultra decrypts revealed U-859's departure from Penang bound for Germany. Perfect intelligence, perfect positioning, perfect execution. U-859 under Captain Lieutenant Johann Jebsen had departed Kiel on April 4, 1944, six-month patrol using snorkel technology. U-859 carried 31 tons of mercury destined for Japanese munitions plants. Heslett positioned Trenton northwest of Penang directly across U-859's projected track. At approximately 0600 hours, with U-859 mere hours from completing its six-month odyssey, Heslett executed a snap attack using stern torpedo tubes. The torpedo struck U-859 amidships, breaking the U-boat in two. It sank immediately, killing 47, including Jebsen. Both engagements occurred through intelligence positioning. Ultra decrypts placing submarines astride known transit routes in confined choke points. The British had cracked German naval. Enigma through captures from U-110 and U-559. Lieutenant Anthony Fasson and able seaman Colin Grazier both drowned retrieving codebooks from U-559. Both received the George Cross posthumously. Their sacrifice enabled Bletchley Park to decrypt German communications by late 1943. Naval enigma was often being broken quickly enough to enable tactical response. British submarines knew where Axis convoys would sail. They knew when U-boats would transit Norwegian waters. They positioned accordingly and executed with precision. This wasn't submarine superiority finding U-boats through random patrol. It was British intelligence superiority positioning submarines where U-boats would appear. HMS Ventura's engagement proved submarines could prosecute anti-submarine warfare even without specific target intelligence when acoustic conditions aligned. Ventura was patrolling off Fedge Island, Norway, positioned by general intelligence but not tracking a specific target. At 0932, the hydrophone operator detected machinery noise. For 3 hours, Launders tracked entirely passively at 1212. He fired 4 torpedoes at 17-second intervals in a spread pattern covering U-864's zigzag. U-864 detected the first 3 torpedoes acoustically and maneuvered to avoid them. The 4th struck amidships. 73 crew died. This engagement remains the only fully submerged submarine versus submarine kill in history. It proved the acoustic advantage was real. The tactical superiority was real. A properly positioned submarine with a skilled commander could track, target, and kill a U-boat using only passive detection while remaining completely undetectable. Everything the theory predicted. Everything the technical specifications suggested. Ventura demonstrated it worked when circumstances permitted. Launders received the DSO. His crew received 7 DSEs, 11 DSMs, and 9 mentions in dispatches. The Royal Navy had proof that submarines could hunt submarines more effectively than destroyers when given the opportunity. But Ventura's kill was unique precisely because submarine versus submarine encounters, under conditions allowing submerged attack, almost never occurred. One historic engagement in 6 years of war. 12 total kills by British submarines against German U-boats. The overwhelming majority of British submarine operations focused on missions for which they were originally designed, attacking surface vessels and interdicting enemy supply lines. And in those missions, T-class submarines achieved remarkable success, operating from Malta, Alexandria, and Gibraltar. T-class submarines devastated Axis supply convoys to North Africa. HMS Upholder sank 119,000 tons of shipping before being lost in April 1942. In the weeks before El Alamein in October 1942, British submarines and aircraft destroyed 44% of all cargoes shipped to Libya, contributing to Rommel's defeat. This Mediterranean campaign cost dearly. 13 of 15 T-class losses occurred there. Yet the strategic impact justified the losses. British submarines helped starve Rommel's Afrika Korps at the critical moment. Transferred to the Pacific from late 1943, T-class boats operated under United States 7th Fleet Command. HMS Tally-Ho sank Japanese cruiser Kuma. HMS Triton destroyed Japanese heavy cruiser Ashigara on June 8, 1945, the largest Japanese warship sunk by British submarine. All British submarines combined conducted 3,000 patrols. Sank 1,670,000 tons of merchant shipping and 158 combatant ships. The 12 U-boat kills represent a tiny fraction of overall achievements, confirming that geography and operational separation, by capability limitations, explained the modest anti-U-boat results. So, what's the honest historical assessment? British T-class submarines were exceptional warships that achieved remarkable successes. They contributed to Allied victory in North Africa through Mediterranean convoy interdiction. They operated effectively in the Far East against Japanese forces. HMS Venturer's historic kill proved submarines could successfully prosecute anti-submarine warfare when tactical circumstances aligned. The theoretical advantages submarines possessed when hunting U-boats were absolutely real. Vastly superior acoustic stealth, significantly greater detection ranges, complete three-dimensional mobility. These advantages rarely mattered strategically because geography, missions, and detection limitations kept British submarines and German U-boats operating separately. When ultra-intelligence positioned submarines correctly, when U-boats appeared at predicted times and places, British submarines demonstrated how lethal passive tracking and torpedo attack could be. Those rare engagements validated the theory comprehensively. The story isn't about British failure. It's about British innovation, creating capabilities that operational realities prevented from full employment against U-boats, specifically. T-class submarines could hunt more effectively than destroyers when given the opportunity. HMS Venturer, HMS Tally-Ho, and HMS Triton proved it conclusively. But encounters occurred rarely. 53 T-class submarines were built between 1936 and 1946. 15 were lost approximately. 28%. T-class submarines sank over 1.5 million tons of enemy shipping. They destroyed major warships. They interdicted critical supply lines. They conducted hundreds of special operations. They proved instrumental in multiple campaigns from the Mediterranean to the Far East. The technical capabilities that could have made them deadly U-boat hunters served them brilliantly in commerce, warfare, and surface ship attacks. British innovation worked exactly as designed for the missions actually assigned. That German U-boat crews never developed fear of them reflects geographic and operational separation, not British failure. If the war had been fought in different theaters, if encounters had occurred regularly instead of rarely, the story might have been dramatically different. HMS Venturer demonstrated what might have been. 3 hours of silent tracking, perfect passive detection, calculated firing solution, 4 torpedoes at 17-second intervals, 1 hit amidships, U-864 destroyed completely. 73 Germans dead, 0 British casualties. Complete tactical dominance achieved through acoustic superiority and three-dimensional maneuver. Everything the theory predicted. Everything British innovation promised, executed flawlessly when opportunity arose. That it happened once instead of many times doesn't diminish British achievement. It highlights the operational realities that kept theoretical advantages from becoming widespread strategic impact. Geography matters, mission focus matters. Detection limitations matter. British submarines had the silent advantage. They proved it when circumstances allowed. They just rarely got those circumstances in the specific context of hunting German U-boats. And that's the honest story worth telling. Not mythology about widespread German fear, but truth about British innovation that worked brilliantly for the missions that mattered most. Innovation that saved countless Allied lives. Innovation that sank Japanese cruisers and interdicted enemy supply lines. Innovation that proved submarines could hunt submarines when everything aligned perfectly. Innovation that honored the thousands of British submariners who never returned home. Men who did their duty with exceptional skill and courage in the most demanding environment warfare offers. The silent service, the silent advantage, used brilliantly when opportunities arose, creating capabilities that validated theory even when operational realities limited application against German U-boats. British submarine warfare at its finest, achieving strategic impact while maintaining capability for the rare engagements that proved what might have been possible under different circumstances.